The sky was clear. A perfect blue canvas stretched wide over the open field. Rows of wooden chairs lined the freshly cut grass. And soft string music drifted from the small quartet stationed near the altar. A gentle breeze stirred the white cloth draping the ceremonial arch, fluttering like a whisper through the summer air. It was, by all appearances, a perfect wedding day. Guests smiled and turned in their seats as the music changed, cueing the start of the procession. Bridesmaids in pale rose dresses began walking down the aisle, followed by the ring-bearer, Emily's young nephew, holding a silk pillow with trembling seriousness. And then, the moment everyone had been waiting for. The bride. Emily stood at the edge of the aisle, framed by a curtain of sunlight and trailing lace. Her dress shimmered with delicate embroidery, the veil falling softly over her shoulders. She wore a practiced smile, the kind that could calm a room, but her fingers gripped the bouquet with just a touch too much force. Still, no one noticed. Why would they? Everyone saw what they wanted to see. A beautiful bride on a perfect day. Walking toward a man who adored her. Daniel stood waiting at the altar, a broad smile on his face. His eyes fixed on her as if nothing else existed. In that moment, it seemed like nothing could possibly go wrong. But then came the growl. Low, sharp, out of place. It sliced through the music like a thorn. Heads turned. Confused whispers spread across the aisle. From the side of the field, bounding across the grass with startling speed, came a sleek German shepherd in a black working harness. Its eyes locked on the bride. "Echo?" someone muttered. It was a K9 unit. Recognizable, trained, marked with the emblem of local law enforcement. But it wasn't supposed to be there. The dog snarled, teeth bared, body tense like a coiled spring. Guests gasped, some rising from their seats. Emily froze mid-step. Echo came to a stop just feet from her. Stance rigid, tail stiff, ears pinned back. The growl deepened. And then, he barked. Loud, commanding, once, twice, straight at Emily. The music stopped. Someone shouted, "Is it attacking?" "No," a man near the front said quickly. Likely a handler or someone who recognized the dog. "That's not aggression. That's alert behavior." Daniel moved toward Emily, concern etched into his face. "What's going on?" "I don't know," Emily replied, voice calm but tight. "Maybe someone let him loose from training. He's probably confused." But Echo wasn't confused. He stayed right where he was, refusing to let Emily pass. She took another step, her smile faltering. Echo barked again, 3 sharp bursts, and began pacing in a circle around her. Tail twitching, hackles raised, not lunging, not biting, just guarding, or warning. A few guests stood, some backed away. The officiant stepped down from the altar. Daniel took Emily's hand. "I'm going to get someone," he whispered. "No," Emily said quickly. "Too quickly. Just give it a second. I'm sure it'll stop." But it didn't. Echo wasn't there by accident. And he wasn't stopping. Emily stood rooted, her bouquet trembling now. She tried to laugh. "He must smell something strange on me. I had a new perfume this morning." But her voice was wrong. Too light, too rehearsed. Guests exchanged looks. Some sat down again, unsure of what to do. Others remained standing, watching the dog as if waiting for it to make the next move. Echo stopped circling. He sat directly in front of Emily now. Chest heaving, eyes narrowed. He let out a single, drawn-out growl. Not rage, certainty. Daniel looked to the handler who had finally arrived from the far side of the lawn. Running and breathless. "Is he okay?" Daniel asked. The man didn't answer at first. He looked at Echo, then at Emily, and his face changed. "He's alerting," the handler said slowly. "What does that mean?" Daniel asked, confused. The handler knelt by Echo, trying to guide him back gently. But the dog didn't budge. He kept staring at Emily with unwavering intensity. Then the handler added, more carefully, "He's been trained to detect substances. Explosives. GSR. Blood. Certain chemicals. Fear. Fear." Someone echoed from the crowd. "Elevated cortisol. High stress indicators. Adrenaline. On rare occasions. Deception triggers his response too." A silence fell. Emily's hands trembled. Daniel looked at her. "Emily? I don't know what's going on." She whispered. "I didn't do anything." But Echo barked again. Louder this time. Urgent. A woman in the back row stood abruptly. "Maybe we should clear the area." "Wait," Daniel said. "We don't even know what he's reacting to. He could be wrong." Echo barked again, then lay down. It was his final signal. Passive alert. Target found. Eyes narrowed. Locked. On the bride. In the confusion that followed, the ceremony didn't continue. Guests were asked to step away from the aisle as Echo remained by Emily's feet. Refusing to leave, the handler radioed for a second unit. Emily sat down on a bench under the oak tree, hands clasped in her lap. Veil pushed back. Her eyes were dry. Her expression carefully composed, but something behind it flickered, a shadow, a fracture. Daniel knelt in front of her. "Just tell me what's happening," he said, not accusing, just scared. Emily said nothing. She looked past him, at the dog. Echo sat quietly now. He wasn't growling anymore, just watching her. His breath calm, his body still, but the message was clear. He knew something no one else in that moment did. Later, much later, people would speculate about the odd timing, the dog's presence, about how Emily had seemed too quiet, too careful, too perfect. How Daniel's family had never known much about her past. How there were things in her story that didn't quite add up. Some would say Echo saved the wedding. Others would say he ended it. But in truth, he didn't do either. He just responded to something only a creature like him could sense. Fear, guilt, a chemical tremor in the air. Something that whispered not right in a language beyond human comprehension. A vow interrupted, not by man, not by fate, but by loyalty, by instinct, by truth, wrapped in fur and teeth and silence. And so the wedding stopped. Not because someone said, "I object," but because someone couldn't say what needed to be said. And something else did it for them. The honeymoon suite was bathed in warm, amber light. A soft glowing lamp cast golden shadows across the walls, reflecting off champagne flutes and the silk edges of the bedspread. The scent of roses lingered in the air, dozens of them arranged perfectly in vases around the room. But the air was wrong. Too still, too tight. Daniel stood near the center of the room. Jacket off, bow tie loosened, but his posture tense. His gaze kept drifting toward the door, toward Echo. The German shepherd stood rigid on the threshold. Body stiff, ears high, tail unmoving. He didn't growl constantly anymore. Just a deep, low rumble that came and went like distant thunder. His eyes were locked on Emily. He hadn't stepped paw inside the room. Echo, Daniel said gently, kneeling and tapping his thigh. It's okay. Come in, boy. But the dog didn't budge. Emily sat at the edge of the bed, her hands folded neatly in her lap, veil now draped over the bedpost. She hadn't tried to pet Echo once. Hadn't moved toward him at all since they'd arrived. I don't know why he's acting like this, she said softly. Maybe the stress of today got to him too. Daniel glanced at her. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. He's not like this, Daniel murmured, looking back at Echo. Not ever, not without reason. You've worked with him for years. Dogs can have off days too. Right? He didn't answer. Instead, he rose slowly and walked to the door, crouching beside Echo, who leaned back slightly, not from Daniel, but from the room itself. From what was in it. Or who? Echo, Daniel whispered, scratching gently behind the ears. What's going on? Huh? You've never looked at her like that before. The dog didn't respond, just kept watching. Daniel turned back to the room. His brow furrowed. The contrast between light and shadow had changed since they entered. The glow of the room, once meant to be romantic and soft, now felt heavy, like a filter over something too bright, too forced. He stepped back into the room and turned toward Emily. She was watching him, calmly, still. Why didn't you want me to call the handler earlier? He asked. Emily blinked. What? At the ceremony, when Echo barked at you. You told me not to get anyone. You tried to laugh it off. I was trying to keep the wedding from falling apart, she said carefully. I didn't want to panic everyone. But you weren't surprised. She stood up, smoothing her dress. What are you implying? Daniel didn't answer immediately. He looked toward Echo again, who had now sat down but kept a direct line of sight on her. Echo's not just a dog. He's trained. Years of service. Explosives. Narcotics. Blood residue. Aggression cues. Deception detection. He's certified in all of it. You know that, right? Emily looked away. Daniel stepped closer. He's never misfired, never flagged someone without cause, even in chaotic environments. But today, he wouldn't stop. Maybe he's confused. No, Emily, he's alert. The room chilled despite the warm light. Emily wrapped her arms around herself. You're letting a dog ruin our wedding night. I'm not letting anything ruin anything, Daniel said quietly. I'm just trying to understand. He studied her, and for the first time that day, he really saw her. She wasn't trembling. She wasn't angry. She wasn't even afraid. She was composed. Too composed. Something's not right, Daniel whispered. I feel it. He feels it. Emily didn't respond. Outside the suite, the wind picked up, brushing against the window with a soft whoosh. Echo's ears twitched. Daniel turned toward a side table, picked up her clutch purse, and handed it to her. Open it. She hesitated. Why? Just open it. She looked at him, then slowly unlatched the bag and turned it upside down. Lipstick, a compact mirror, tissues, nothing suspicious. See? She said. Daniel didn't move. Take off your shoes. What? Please. She stared at him for a long second, then stepped out of her heels. Still, Echo didn't move. Daniel walked to the bed, sat down, ran a hand through his hair. I've trusted Echo more than I've trusted most people, he said. He's gotten me through situations I didn't think I'd survive. But tonight, he's acting like you're a threat. I'm not. Then tell me why he won't come in. Tell me why his instincts, his training, are all sounding alarms. Emily was silent. The soft hum of a distant generator filled the space between them. Then she sighed, and for the first time, her expression cracked. Not much, just enough. Her shoulders dropped slightly, her gaze fell, not in guilt, but in decision. You're right, she said. Something's wrong. Daniel straightened. Echo stood, ears perked. But not the way you think, Emily added. Daniel waited. She walked slowly toward the balcony doors, sliding them open. Cool air rushed in, fluttering the curtain. I'm not here to hurt you, she said, but I'm not the person you think I am either. He rose to his feet. What does that mean? She turned. Everything about today, the flowers, the guests, the vows, it was real. But the story I told you, about my life, my past, it was curated. Echo took a cautious step forward. Curated? Daniel echoed. I changed my name 5 years ago, she said. Witness protection, relocation. I had to disappear. And I never expected to fall in love with someone in law enforcement. Daniel stepped back, stunned. Why didn't you tell me? Because I wanted this life to be real, even if it was built on something I couldn't explain. But Echo, he saw through it. Maybe the stress triggered something. Maybe the scent of old memories. I don't know. Echo stood fully inside the room now. Silent. No growl. No bark. Daniel looked at her. The woman he thought he knew. The woman who had just unraveled everything in the space of a single breath. I need time, he said finally. She nodded. I understand. He walked to Echo, kneeling beside him again. The dog licked his hand gently. Daniel whispered, "Good boy," because somehow, in the warmth of that golden room, beneath soft lights, beside roses and wedding gifts and whispered vows, it was the growl in the doorway that told the truth. Something had been hiding in the silence, and Echo had found it. Not to destroy it, but to reveal it. Now, Daniel had to decide what came next. The only light in the room came from the laptop screen, casting a pale glow over the cluttered desk. Shadows stretched long across the walls of the small home office, where the hum of the computer fan filled the silence like a heartbeat. Daniel sat motionless, eyes fixed on the screen. Lines of data blinked back at him. A digital profile, stark and undeniable. Government records. Archived photos. A fingerprint scan. His most recent input. Taken from the teacup she had sipped from earlier that week. Cross-referenced. Verified. Match found. Name: Carmen Delaney. Status: international fugitive. Charges: grand larceny, identity theft, corporate espionage, conspiracy. Last confirmed sighting 5 years ago. Status: at large. Considered highly intelligent and dangerous. Daniel leaned back slowly, his hands falling to his lap. His chest rose and fell in shallow, careful breaths. He whispered the name aloud. Carmen Delaney. It didn't fit. It didn't belong to the woman he'd walked beside for 2 years. The woman he'd brought Echo to meet. The woman who had cried during the vows she wrote. And who looked at him like he was the only safe place left in the world. But it was her. He stared at the photo, an older shot. Her hair darker, her jaw sharper, eyes hidden behind large sunglasses. But the fingerprint scan left no doubt. The angles of her face were the same. The set of her mouth. That faint scar near her eyebrow she once claimed came from a childhood fall. It wasn't a fall. It was the mark from her last arrest attempt, mentioned in the arrest report buried beneath the Interpol flag. He felt the ache building in his chest. Not the clean sting of betrayal. Something messier. A slow, suffocating weight. Next to him, Echo lay on the rug. Head raised. Watching. Always watching. Daniel turned to the dog. And for the first time that night, spoke aloud. "You knew, didn't you?" Echo didn't respond with a bark or a wag. He just stared, ears slightly tilted, eyes steady, as if saying, "I knew something. I always did." Daniel reached down and stroked the dog's head with a trembling hand. "I should have listened to you. From the very beginning." He thought back. Every subtle hesitation Echo had shown around her. The quiet growls. The way the dog had refused to cross certain thresholds. It hadn't been training errors. It had been instinct. The same instinct that had once saved Daniel's life on a drug raid. The same instinct that had stopped a wedding. And now, sitting alone in this dim room, Daniel realized something even heavier. He had ignored the truth. Worse, he had chosen love over logic, emotion over evidence. He had let himself believe in the version of her he loved. Not the version that had once been hunted across continents. He opened the file again. Aliases: Eleanor Creed, Elise Martin, Emily Rhodes. There it was. Emily. The name he knew, the name that had held his hand, kissed his face, and told him she wanted forever. A lie. Or was it? That was the hardest part. Because even now, a voice inside him whispered that maybe not all of it had been false. Maybe she really had tried to change. Maybe she had buried the past to build something real. But Echo's growl echoed in his mind like a warning. She hadn't told him. She had let him build a life on sand and secrets. And that mattered. The screen dimmed slightly, prompting him to move the mouse. He clicked through to the next document, an old FBI notice. Suspected to be operating under new identities. Target is elusive. manipulative, skilled in psychological profiling. His stomach turned. He remembered their conversations, the way she always knew what to say, the way she could disarm anyone with a glance, the stories that never quite had edges, always blurred, always shifting. Echo stood now, walking slowly to his side. He rested his head on Daniel's knee. Daniel didn't cry. He couldn't. The pain was too vast for that. Instead, he whispered, "She said she changed." Echo remained still. She said she didn't want to run anymore. The weight of that statement hung in the room. Outside, wind rustled the trees. Somewhere distant, a car passed on the road. But inside, it was just the man, the dog, and a brutal silence. Daniel shut the laptop slowly. He stared at the blank wall in front of him. His mind flashed to the first time he saw her, brushing her hair back at the cafe. Laughing at his awful joke. How she held Echo's leash awkwardly the first time they walked together. How she hummed when she cooked, even when she didn't realize it. And how, every time she said "I love you," her voice never trembled. How do you measure truth in someone who's lived by lies? Daniel didn't know. He only knew he was standing at the edge of a chasm. On one side, love, memories, the life they'd built. On the other, the person she had once been, the person she had hidden from him. And in between, pain. He looked at Echo. "I have to turn her in," he said finally. "Don't I?" Echo said nothing, but his eyes didn't leave Daniel's. And Daniel knew. There were lines that couldn't be crossed, no matter how much the heart bled. There were oaths behind badges, truths behind uniforms, and vows that didn't begin with "I do," but with duty. He stood slowly. The pain didn't lessen, but the decision was made. He would find her, and he would ask for the truth, one last time. Not as a lover, not even as a betrayed man, but as the officer he had sworn to be. Because in the end, the only thing more powerful than love was what you did when it was tested. And in the quiet, Echo followed. The sky was burning, not with fire, but with color, a heavy sweep of crimson and amber stretching across the horizon. Clouds caught the fading light like silk on flame, and the wind stirred softly, lifting strands of hair, tugging gently at clothing, as if the world itself was holding its breath. Daniel stood on the rooftop of the old municipal building, staring out at the city he had served for nearly a decade. The streets below were distant, abstract. Here, everything felt detached, above the noise, above the chaos, just silence and sky. Behind him, the metal door creaked open. Footsteps, measured, familiar. He didn't turn. "Emily," he said, voice low. A pause. Then, gently, "It's Carmen." He turned. She stood at the far end of the rooftop, wind teasing her hair, eyes tired. Her clothes were simple, loose. She looked nothing like the bride he had walked down the aisle with. Nothing like the woman who had once laughed in his kitchen, curled beneath blankets on his couch, whispered promises in the dark. But it was her, the woman with 2 names. And 1,000 more truths than she had ever let him see. Between them, Echo sat, still, silent, a sentinel carved from shadow and fur. He didn't growl. He didn't wag. He simply watched. Like he knew this was no place for sides, only honesty. "I didn't run," she said first. "I knew you'd find me." Daniel crossed his arms. "I didn't have to look far." She nodded. The wind moved again, slower this time. The city below began to blur as lights flickered on, one by one, against the dusk. "I should have told you sooner," she said. "You should have told me everything," he replied. "I know." Silence stretched, taut and painful. He stepped closer. Echo remained between them, unmoving. "Why?" Daniel asked. "Why me?" Carmen looked at him, eyes glassy. "Because you didn't ask who I was. You asked who I wanted to be." He blinked. "And for the first time in my life," she continued, "I didn't feel like a fugitive. I felt seen." Daniel swallowed hard. "And yet," he said, "you let me love a lie." "No," she said quickly. "I let you love a part of me I was afraid to believe could be real." He looked down. Echo turned his head slightly. Watching them both now, Carmen stepped forward, slowly, stopping just a few feet from him. "I was Carmen Delaney," she said, "a thief, a con. I manipulated people for years. I told stories I didn't believe in, wore names that weren't mine, and ran from every version of myself that got too close to the truth." Tears welled in her eyes. "But you, Daniel, you were never part of that. With you, I didn't steal, I didn't scheme, I just breathed. And it terrified me." Daniel clenched his jaw. "You built a future with me. I built a future for me," she corrected. "One I didn't think I deserved until Echo growled and I realized I was living in a lie again. A better one, a softer one, but still a lie." She crouched down slowly, resting her hand gently on Echo's back. "The dog didn't move, didn't pull away. You saw me for who I wanted to be," she whispered, "and Echo saw me for what I still was." Daniel stepped forward. Now they were only a pace apart. He stared at her. This woman he had loved. This woman who had wrecked that love with truth too long delayed. "Do you love me?" he asked. Her eyes locked onto his. "I did," she said. "I do." "Then why lie?" "Because I thought I could leave the past behind. But I couldn't, and now I've brought it to your doorstep." Daniel's voice was barely above a whisper. "You didn't just lie to me. You made me doubt myself. My dog, my instincts, my heart. I know," she said, voice cracking, "and I'll never forgive myself for that." He looked away, blinking against the ache that had taken root in his chest. "I should turn you in," he said. "I know." Echo rose now, standing between them, calm, steady, neither threat nor friend, just presence. Carmen reached into her pocket slowly and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "I made a deal," she said, "with the Bureau. Turn myself in. Give them everything I know. Witness cooperation. It won't erase the past. But maybe it buys back a sliver of it." Daniel took the paper, scanned it. It was real. She had already signed. She had already chosen. "I'm not asking you to forgive me," she said. "I'm asking you to remember that what we had wasn't all fake." Daniel looked up at her. Tears finally rising, soft and bitter. "I remember everything," he said, "and that's the hardest part. The wind moved again, colder now. The city below shimmered with nightfall. Echo walked slowly toward Carmen and sat beside her. Daniel watched them, two souls shaped by instinct and silence. Then he stepped back and nodded. She looked at him one last time. "I'm sorry, Daniel." He didn't speak. Some words have no reply. She turned and walked toward the rooftop door. Echo followed behind, pausing once to look back. Daniel met the dog's eyes. No anger, no relief, just understanding. When the door shut behind them, Daniel remained there, alone under the burning sky. There were no sirens, no arrests, no grand gestures. Just a quiet end to a story built on too many truths arriving too late. He closed his eyes and whispered into the wind. No one wins, but in that loss, maybe something honest finally began. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long golden beams across the small courtyard. A soft wind rustled the leaves, carrying with it the scent of earth and distant pine. The air was warm, but not heavy, tinged with that quiet stillness that only comes in the hour between day and night. When everything begins to rest, Daniel sat on a weathered wooden bench, his elbows on his knees, hands loosely clasped. His uniform jacket lay beside him, unused, folded, gathering dust, not out of neglect, but because he no longer needed it to define him. Next to him, Carmen sat with her legs crossed, hands resting in her lap. She wore no disguise now, no new name, just herself. Her hair was shorter than it used to be, tucked behind one ear, catching the light with a copper sheen. There was something quieter in her presence these days. Not hidden, settled. In front of them, the ground had been turned and healed. A young oak tree stood just a few feet tall, leaves trembling in the breeze, its trunk wrapped in protective cloth. The soil around it was fresh, dark, and still damp from the afternoon's watering. They had planted it together, not to bury anything, but to begin. Between their feet, Echo lay sprawled in the dirt, his chin resting lazily on one paw. His ears flicked occasionally at birdsong, but there was no tension in his body, no stiffness, no growl. He was still alert, but not watching, not judging. He was resting, trusting. Daniel glanced down at the dog, then at Carmen. "I didn't think we'd get here," he said quietly. Carmen smiled, not with pride or triumph, but with something deeper, peace. "Neither did I." They fell into silence again, comfortable now. The year had not been easy. After Carmen's rooftop surrender, she'd entered a witness cooperation program. She testified in 2 major cases, turned over encrypted data from years past, and exposed a ring of corruption spanning across 4 countries. In exchange, the charges against her were reduced. She served 6 months in supervised custody, followed by release under strict supervision. And Daniel had been there, quietly, steadily, not always sure, not always ready to forgive, but never walking away. They didn't talk about love at first. They didn't talk about the wedding, the broken vows, the pain. They talked about soil, about trees, about Echo's training, about food, about truth. And day by day, They stopped speaking like two people with something to hide, and started speaking like two people willing to grow. So they moved out of the city, found a little cottage near the hills with a garden in back and a fence just tall enough to keep Echo from chasing squirrels into the neighbor's tomatoes. One afternoon, Daniel came home with a tree sapling in the back of his truck. "What's this?" Carmen asked. He shrugged. "I figured if we're going to stay, we should plant something that does too." And so they did. Side by side, knees in the dirt, palms pressed into earth, they planted the oak. Not a gesture of erasure, but of endurance. Now, Carmen reached down, brushing dirt from Echo's fur. "He sleeps so deeply now," she murmured. Daniel smiled faintly. "That's how you know he's safe." "He always was." Daniel looked at her. "Even with me," she added. He didn't argue. He didn't need to. She had earned her way back, not through grand apologies or perfect explanations, but through consistency, patience, and presence. One afternoon, she had simply said, "I can't undo the past, but I can stop running from it." And that was enough. That, and the tree. He looked at the oak now, small, fragile, but with roots that reached deep. It would take time to grow. Years even, before it offered real shade. But they had time. Carmen leaned her head on his shoulder. "You still think about that day?" she asked softly. Daniel nodded. "The rooftop, all the time. I almost left that night." "I know. But then Echo." She smiled down at the dog. "He didn't move, like he was telling me to stay." Daniel nodded. "He always knows," he said. They sat there as the sky began to shift, orange giving way to lavender, gold slipping into blue. Birds quieted, crickets stirred, the oak rustled softly, as if whispering secrets into the wind. Carmen straightened. "You ever think we'll be normal?" she asked. Daniel tilted his head. "What's normal?" "I don't know. Weekends at the market. Dinners without whispered names or burned pasts. We had dinner last night," he said, "and nobody ran." She laughed gently. "I guess that counts." "It counts," he said. He took her hand. They sat like that for a while longer. No rush, no fear, just two people under an open sky. A young tree between them, and a dog at their feet who had once seen through every secret. Now Echo slept without tension. Because he had judged, and chosen. He had stayed. And so had they. When the stars began to emerge, Daniel finally stood and stretched. "I'll make some tea," he said. Carmen nodded. He walked back toward the house. Footsteps soft against the gravel path. She stayed seated, watching the oak, hand resting on Echo's back. "I used to think I had to change everything," she whispered, "to be someone else, to matter." Echo's ear twitched. "But maybe all I ever needed was to stop pretending. And just begin." The wind picked up again, brushing against the leaves, lifting them in tiny dances. And somewhere, just beneath the surface, the roots grew deeper, quietly, steadily, a new beginning, a new root, one that held the promise of a future shaped not by fear, but by choice.
Thank you for watching the video. If you enjoyed it, please comment 1. And if you didn't, just hit like. See you in the next videos.